everyone, and welcome to another Galactic Interversal Consortium. Today's episode is being filmed on 4/20/26. We're here with Richie McGreevy today, along with Bjorn and all of you. But before we go any further, I now open the circle to true benevolence and no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. The law of one. When one is helped, all are helped. All in unity stand stronger. So therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, I ask that only the highest good be done. I ask that all negative entities and energies be swept away as of this moment in time. I give thanks that this is done. So be it, and so it is. So this is going to be a special episode here. This is going to be focused more on the Untumban culture. And I find this fascinating because some of these cultures are now coming back in to do a review of their and a redo or more of a retcon of some of their previous materials in some way, if there was some untruths maybe inserted in there somewhere. And back in the old GIC days, when maybe there was some exaggeration, hyperbole, what have you, that was put in there. This group is coming in to either reaffirm or cut loose some information. So I find this very interesting. Richie came across a man by the name of, I believe his name is Dakai, and Dakai was
Dakai.
Dakai?
Dakai.
Dakai. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. Dakai. Okay. Dakai, he was very cool. This group has been very kind to us. They helped out immensely the other day when we were having some issues. But they've been having some issues of their own, not just from the aquatic Draco, but from the avian Draco and other groups, some Orion groups and whatnot. And their history is very colorful, illustrious history. They are the Proto-Japanese and Chinese Oriental cultures, where they came here in the time of the Great Seeding. As far as I know at the moment, Dakai may add to this, of course, but they came in, added the island of Japan and some of the other land masses, and a lot of the Oriental-based cultures descend directly from Ontumban lineage. And their language even, which I find interesting. Out there, the Ontumban language, like with the Japanese language, it's based on ideas. And their technology isn't necessarily, doesn't read linearly. It's like more in symbols that come at you on a screen or on a holographic, look like branch type computer console. Their technology is also a little bit of crystalline photonic based, and it's geometric based. Their protection domes for their cities look like big protection domes, like with leaves wrapped around them, like you'd expect from Japan. You go there and see all the ancient styling and everything. Tori gates, those were their access to the Bifrost, from what I understand. And what was listed when we went to Japan, we saw on a gravestone that it had one phrase repeated over and over again on one Tori gate. It said, "Open this door." And I found that very fascinating, meaning they were commanding at a particular frequency to open the Bifrost passage. And they more than likely put a glyph on there, the glyph that was with it, to actually access that particular Bifrost passage. So I find it very fascinating that there were so many similarities to a lot of the ET cultures, especially Asgardian to Untumban. There's a strong relationship between those two. So, but I find it very fascinating. So I'm going to read very, very briefly here. Along with Dakai, he was wanting me to bring up one thing about the creator of the Dragon Ball series. If people heard me talk about Dragon Ball Z in the past, and I think it warrants a show at some point on just strictly this. But Akira Toriyama was born in 1955, died in 2024. And he was the creator of the Dragon Ball series. And I came to find out that some of the main characters, what actually got him killed was he was depicting some of the main heroes, taking down some of these nastier forces, like from Draco to Draco Reptilian to Orion to Aquatic Draco, any of them. The depictions were very close to what these creatures actually look like. And so he was basically formulating an egregorish energy, mass co-creative energy towards the bad guy's extinction. So I found out this is what ultimately got him killed. He died at the age of 68. And he died of an acute subdural hematoma, which was bleeding on the brain. which, of course, the B2K and the external microwave energies could accomplish. So by getting him in the head. So I found out that was actually fascinating. I believe quite a while he came in and told me and Richie this in a private conversation. But the crux of this, what I wanted to bring up was the retelling of the Untumban history in a way that's actually makes much more sense than the previous tellings of it have. So, Richie, Bjorn, do you want to continue?
No.
Go ahead. Go on, Bjorn. Do you want to talk?
Okay. Go on, Bjorn.
Well, I was just going to say I don't know much about the Untumbans. I'm interested in their connections with Asgardians, as you say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That, and also, if people remember when we went to Japan and did the clearing of Fukushima, Joanna did for that lifting episode. Also, we talked to Abe no Seimei. We found out he was an architect from Ontumba that created the line magic to protect Kyoto during the what was called the Demon Parades when that happened there. And also the Onmyashi were actually his descendant lineages that helped, unfortunately, during certain families during feudal Japan times. They kind of went down the toilet at that point, but helping to divide rather than unify. But his actual name was Takan, and we'll see how true some of this information was that we learned about 6 years ago. So about some of the Untumbans. So there was also one thing that Kai wanted me to mention.
I just wanted to add in. I've always been most people have always been fascinated with Japanese culture. I think it's a lot of it's been a lot of people have been introduced to it through like anime and stuff like that, or video games. And ever since I got into the whole ET connection, I thought, okay, I was just curious to know where they came into, if they were, because I remember one time we were told that the Japanese were a mixture of races. There was like, there was Eben in there, there was elementals, there was Twaffen in there as well. So and it made sense because of some of the way the Ebens look as well. And if you look at some of these more like anime high school girls with the big eyes and all that, not much features to the face, it's very reminiscent of like the hybrid children. And so even in some of the stories, these children are very gifted at a lot of stuff. And so, but okay, so are they like a multicultural races, or is there a specific like origin of like who they are, or is
yeah,
kind of like as we know with the Vikings, the Asgardians have some genetic descendants within the Vikings. So I wonder if they had with maybe parts of Japan, like maybe the samurai. Those people were separate from a lot of areas of Japan. They were considered their soldiers, but they were also a separate people. I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also I came to find out that the original story that we were told was that they came from a different universe and wanted to keep an eye on the Orions. But then here's another angle that I had not considered until recently. There was I was told do research on breakaway civilizations post World War II. And I'm like, all right, and also time travel families, things of this nature, like what we did with Montauk, Gardner family, Sverdlov family, all of this. I'm like, okay, what Dakai was trying to get me to do was try to build a bridge between all of these concepts. And because we had felt they were from a different timeline. So there's some people that believe out there that post World War II, just like with the Martian Germans, that the Japanese actually created their own breakaway and subsequently their own time travel technology, and that some believe the Untumban culture was a result of basically retroactively changing the timelines. Some people believe that. And I'm thinking, okay, this is curious to me, just like how religion and some of the Jesus story was the same retroactive planting of number coding in history. Could somebody have done the same over here? And so Dakai wanted me to look into some of this. And I'm like, okay. The same, and then also one other thing he planted in my head this morning, very, very loudly. We watched the series of Joanne and I watched the series The Man in the High Castle, where Philip K. Dick had remote viewed a parallel universe, whereas both Hitler and the Nazis and Japan won the Second World War. And it's a very interesting series about people that travel between parallel universes. And there was this one scene that he kept cramming into my head. I'm like, why this one? Of all the innocuous scenes. At the very end of the series, I don't want to spoil it for people, there is a character, there's a character that owns a shop by the name of Robert Children. And he falls in love with this Japanese woman named Yukiko. And at the very end, they get separated by the Japanese soldiers, where they won't let him go to Japan with her when they're reunifying North America away from the Nazis and Japan. When the rebels are, they don't let any of the Japanese people stay until they can get their act together. So that part's not in the book. That's like outside the book. Maybe this is something he was trying to tell me, something outside of something known. I'm thinking is what he was trying to tell me, because in the actual canon, that sequence never happened. So from what I understand. And also recently, here's another thing. We've been watching Peacemaker, where they go to a parallel universe where it's run by Nazis. Nazis won the Second World War, the same as the timeline that Philip K. Dick viewed. So somebody keeps shoving me back into that particular area. And Dakai this morning basically said, look into the Man in the High Castle. And I thought that we had seen the series quite some time ago. And it was an actor named Brennan Brown that played Robert Children. I couldn't find the other actress, but I couldn't find that particular one. The name wasn't online. But I was like, why that innocuous detail? What is the point to showing me something like that? And he was trying to tell me there was more to the multi-timeline story than I was being given informationally. So is what he was trying to hint at, is what it was. And that he didn't have a whole lot of time, so he just shoved one scene in my head, knowing that I would pick up the code. So Dakai, I actually see you in the periphery here. So I'm seeing a lot of Untumban. There's samurai. I'm seeing samurai, but I'm also seeing some another group as well in robes. They're like they're more in a gi type of robe, and Dakai is wearing he's wearing a one of those skin tight outfits, but he's carrying a sword with him. So and he's in a white outfit. So and okay, I'll give you the floor, Dakai, because it'll be easier to have it from your end. So because all I can do is interpret what you're saying here. So okay. Oh, thank you guys for raising the energy in here. Their energy is quite active. They clear a space immediately. Okay. Okay, benevolent Dakai, you may come in. Thank you for staying outside of the window, and they're very respectful. They stay outside. They don't try to come in. They don't walk in here and bug you. They literally will be on the outside and ask if they can enter. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. So they have this. It's called an honor code. Yes, I know. Okay.
I appreciate it.
And they'll always call out to you. If you can hear them, they'll always call out to you if they can speak. So. Excuse our abruptness for interrupting your laughter, but in this, we are on a, what's the term? Time crunch? No pun intended, because this has to do with more time-oriented type of material. So, with this, I will start from what I know of as the beginning. During the times of what you have dubbed the Great Seeding, which is, we cannot dispute the term used. We have a different name, but the Great Seeding will suffice until such time as you'll be able to understand our language and what we called it. We said something similar, but at the same time, there are interloping things that are trying to interfere. Give me one moment. Now, during that time, during 65 million years of your time ago, before the meteorite was dropped upon the Earth, there were experiments that were going on trying to determine what would be a good species to formulate upon the Earth. You see, species around the universe are cultivated and created when you are attempting to seed a planet. Certain samples have been kept over the eons that then you can purchase from other sources or trade from other sources to create an idyllic paradise of your own if you wish to create a colony. Some in your Halo precepts have called it the Garden of Eden device type of situation, or terraforming. Our people helped form the basalt pillars that you see, the terraforming pieces of technology. Excuse me. Now, with this, these pieces of technology recently become slightly active. Back in the times of Non-Madal, the two brothers that attempted to reactivate the technology could not do so. There was not the power to do so, so they just used them more like Lincoln logs, but I digress in this particular way. In the times of Lemuria and Atlantis. But in the times of the Great Seeding, the insertions of these basalt pillars were crucial along the meridians that you wished to form a planetoid from, based upon, think of it as almost like an acupuncture in a way for something that doesn't exist yet. Think of this. You insert the needles, you insert the rocks underneath the needles, or the rocks first, then the needles, then creating the nerve points, creating the circulatory system, the ecosystem kind of allergenizes as this. Then you begin to form the atmosphere and what this will look like. And the creatures therein. Mach 1 of the Earth had dinosaurs and had weird lizard concoctions that then eventually the Orions went, ooh, we can create certain things from this, which, much to our chagrin, ended up becoming the Draco variations and variants. But I digress in this story. In this, the creatures are far too large for us to handle, and the trees then were subsequently mined by the different galactic groups. This is why you have bluffs that were actually old tree stumps. They're like, oh, we can actually take some resources from this. We have some new samples that we did not count on forming, both DNA and also plant life, flora, fauna, and we can leave a few of the creatures behind, wipe out these larger ones that could eat us, and then we can start again. Because a few of our people got injured or killed as a result of, let's just say, something scary like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and leave it at that. So, with that said, excuse Mr. Hologram over there. Cool it. Now, in this, your duplicitous, what would you call him, unfavorable semicircle is being a pain in our ass. So, in this way, this is, I call him duplicitous because he is both fickle, duplicitous, and quite contradictory in his own existence, but I will leave that at that. Now, otherwise known as an asshole. So, just an open-ended butt that needs a plug, as Igron would say. If he wishes to intercede at this time. But anyhow, during that time, the galactic community realized that if they could, they could start again, get Earth into more of another primordial state that it was before. They could retroactively, as you'd say, retcon or redact some of these other forces or sources, but leave the bones behind for future use, hence paleontology, hence some forms of archaeology as well. Now, Mach 2, we got it correct. It became an idyllic paradise. But then some other ET races started to form, or what you consider ET races, some forms of insectoids and primordial Earth from Mach 1 started to reemerge in the seas and reemerge in on some of the part of the landmass. And was there a Pangea after this? Sort of. We broke it apart and then added more of our landmasses from our homeworlds in place. Even Asgard added in a little bit after a while. Once this was prior to the 9 realms being formed. This was an experiment of a colony to see if multiple races could live on the same planet at once. When this occurred, some of us had different ways of wanting our landmasses and the animals thereon. We could not have a one solid landmass. We broke it up, added other pieces from other planets and other dimensions. And we noticed that in creating this, it formed a nexus of its own, where it had a dimensional quality to it not heard of. Other dimensional races wanted their say as to what was on this particular platform. And your Asgardian contingent eventually said it needed to guard the middle ground between the dimensions, hence the term Midgard. Because of all of the, let's just say, the needles that had been put in, those ended up becoming dimensional pathways. We found this very fascinating, but we did not want to disturb, let's just say, disturb that nature of the force. So, quote unquote, so we let it be. After a while, we began to live upon the Earth, seeing aberrations from other timelines and other time frames. We did not necessarily count on this happening. We even saw people from much later time frames fall into our time frame, and others from other dimensions and expressions and timelines, including the Orions from when later on they would invade. We determined that eventually that something would occur in the system. They were trying to create a Trojan in the system long before the Ragnarok ever took place. When eventually the Ragnarok did take place, this was almost an inevitability at that point. And the ones you call the Asgardian gods then figured they were destined to die. But they made sure that they created a break where it was and it was not, and it is and is not. In doing this within the natural nature of what you call the Yggdrasil tree and the fact that the Earth is linked so intricately through the Yggdrasil tree, this caused its own set of issues much later on in history. Well, did the gods survive the Ragnarok or did they not? They talked to you, so therefore they do. They did. But the planet exploded, so therefore they did not. Yes, were they rescued? Yes. Yes, they were. Yes, by when the name you use, Wodar. But within this, I will not go too much into this. How did the Untumbans fare in this? I have not yet mentioned our home planet. There is a reason behind this. The information you were told about coming from the Orion's timeline and swapping out with another desolated planet to watch the Orions during the Orion Wars. Is there truth to this? No. We did not come from another dimension. Did we form our world like we did the Earth, and where we formed as a vanguard against the Orions? That was the opinion of one named Oshita back in the day, and Kuramtai and a few of the others. Our culture is multicultural. It's not just Asian-looking people. We have from tall whites to fairies to elves to droids. Let's just say androids that resemble very much like your Japanese animation. How did we know about this? Or as your Hulk character would say in your Avengers Endgame, time travel. Now, we get to what I was cramming into his head a little bit ago. the breakaway that he said took place of the Japanese people, just like the Germans did. Did this happen? And are there darker components to this? Yes, of course there are. Are there multiple timelines involved that then retroactively created a colony back in the Orion Wars that then became the Vanguard that you talked about and were told about? Yes, yes, and yes. Just like what was told to you about the some of the fake Valkyrie that went back and formed some of those planets in the Pleiades by taking Viking warriors at the time of death and bringing their heads and other parts over and creating a colony. That did happen. That was was some of the false Valhalla precept, and the Valkyries are quite pissed about that, I might add. And so as Odin, not much could be done with this. So he gathered up some of the screaming souls and created his own idyllic place away from the prying eyes of the time travel program. Now, to bring it all home, you would say, did the future create the past that created the future? Did it both happen in one place? Therefore, the cause created the effect which created the cause? Yes. This is what you are up against in this respect. Yes, we have some Lemurian links as well. We're part of Lemuria. Even the bridge that is off of Japan going to nowhere, went to ancient Lemuria. Also, the war between Atlantis and Lemuria ripped open a lot of fissures. You call them the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle and various other places. This is not what I'm getting at as far as the concept of which I have stated. Think for a moment. Towards, let's say, the end of World War II. Go for a moment when the nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What took place when that happened? The dimensions were thrown into disarray. The elementals at the time were thrown into disarray. The dimensions of which some of my own people inhabit felt that very vividly and very fervently. Also, nuclear plants such as your Fukushima felt very vividly, very fervently by certain gnomes. He called them wet gnomes, where they had some radioactivity to them, where it had bonded with the water in them and turned them into more ghoulish-looking appearances. During this particular breakaway, there was a timeline that you guys were talking about on other shows. You called the Fallout timeline, where there was a skew just past that of World War II into more of a nuclear fusion type of timeline. Your friend Ryan would be curious to know this part, because this is one of the things that formed this timeline. But retroactively, what takes place when something like this happened? Or the line that you heard in your Avengers Endgame, when you mess with time, it tends to mess back? What happens in this case? Breakaway, fast forward a little bit to breakaway civilizations such as your Martian Germans going to Antarctica, then eventually the Moon, Mars, and Ceres. Where did we go? Where did we end up? We wished to go into the times of our ancestors. We had revered our ancestors. So what happened? We retroactively created ourselves. Remember, Bjorn, when Kara told you and Susan about that picture where she had her arm cut off? What happened with this in the dimensions and time and space dimensions where they are? It retroactively affected the picture backwards through time. This is the same effect through some of your time travel projects and earlier SSP inclinations. The civilization that broke away ended up doing the very thing later on in the 60s and 70s. Time travel, therefore, they were inclined to then create themselves. Is that Japanese breakaway still in existence? No, not like the Martian Germans. They are also being dissolved by some of your Venusian colonies and others as well. There are some colonies they created in the past as well that are also, a couple of them out in the Pleiades, a couple in the Aldebaran, such as your Never Wases and Princes of the Universe. Yes, they are partially responsible for this. The Orions are partially responsible for the other. This is part of the story you've never been told. Ontumba being out past the belt of Orion on the other end of the galactic rim. Do we have a planet out there right now? Yes and no. We also have dimensional spaces on the Earth. We are also within your solar system. This is how we can communicate so fervently. When they were communicating from Ontumba, some of the figures that you were speaking to that looked like younger girls that were saying they were the children of certain people, those were some of our, you would call them droid or android types. Richie, you actually encountered one yourself, one of these anime-looking girls. This is a style in which they loved to take up. This came up slightly later in history when other races that had been appearing through the looking glass of relativity, let's just put, began to invent some of these other android types, and some of these young ladies wanted to actually look like some of these figures. So humans coming out in the galaxy will be quite interested to know that some of these particular looks, some of these anime looks, are a real thing. They will be shocked actually as to the way certain people look. And also the fact that certain races were formed from the mixes of the great seeding. And some of those races of the great seeding then were inclined to create the very race that was then of the seeders. I know this is extremely confusing, but this is as much as your human mind can comprehend that of this concept. Also, he has been seeing that certain members of our race, when they pass away on the Earth, they form crystalline clusters, like the Sporzistian life form in Voyager with the Star Trek Voyager with the crystal cluster after they pass away. This is the crystalline DNA. This is galactic human from, he said, 65 million years ago. Did everybody then have that inclination? Yes, because a lot of the seeding races did have this. But as far as time and space goes, this is still a fact. So, both of you have questions for me?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm glad you brought up that history, and it's the question I have for you is, I had wrapped my head around this at first when Chris and I learned about my higher self Wodar, because it seemed like he was both from the future and the past, and it was very confusing. And so I ask you this: a group could be created from the future and actually create themselves from the past as their own ancestors.
Yes.
Can a group be undone in the same way?
Yes, you bet. Because this is why groups such as Time Corps and others were put in place, so somebody could not just end a civilization like this. It can be undone with like just a plucking of the wrong thread in a tapestry and then unweave the entire tapestry. It is not necessarily fragile completely like that. It's just they did not want assailants doing this because this is why your 2194 timeline decided that they were going to slightly separate, so this couldn't be done to them. They believe they earned their stripes in that of the multiverse of madness, mighty multiverse of madness, and they wanted to make sure it stayed that way. So this is also the dimensions within dimensions, or the worlds within worlds, the interverse. They are not necessarily affected by this, neither is Asgard and other dimensional spaces. But the multiverse, this is why in your personal read, Bjorn, he saw some of these figures on different timelines, and somewhere in the crotch of the tree and in the branches, and also in the interverse. This is a protection move. It's because sometimes your time core got, let's just say, God complex, and decided that they were going to uncreate and recreate or snip the timelines like the Gardner family was doing in the time travel projects. This is why they called it pruning in your Loki TV series, by the way. So with that, this is also what's causing some of your Mandela effect. Your CERN is causing Mandela effects, but also the healing of time and the Yggdrasil tree itself is healing, and also making sure that what the Orions did when they ripped across space-time happens no more. The Void and the MDTF and the Valkyrie and others, and even ourselves, help prevent some of these things. We have a civilization we do not wish to be uncreated. It's like in your Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where they encountered their descendants on a planet that they had crash-landed on a planet which they had not crash-landed yet. And then they ended up becoming undone when they didn't crash land. And so another version of Odo had made it so they could go home, and Kira did not die, and all this other stuff. Yes, this actually creates other timelines when things like this happen, so people aren't just winked out of existence. They don't just get uncreated. Now, on a linear respect, yes, they do. Like if somebody went and killed their own grandfather before their father was born, they go back in time. History will correct itself by running them over with a car, which happened in the Montauk Chronicles. But in this respect, they became a temporal faction at that point. There's temporal factions like you see in your Star Trek, like the Temporal Wars, things of this nature. I will try to simplify. With somebody like, say, Woldar, you say, yes, higher self or oversoul? Yes, you could say this, having more knowledge and more connection to the library. But as he saw, that particular avatar was hanging out on a different timeline, and he saw several others hanging out on different timelines as well. This is why you have multitudes of multiplicitous versions within the library. It's anything everywhere all at once, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Now, again, to simplify to the actual answer to the question, could something genuinely be undone or uncreated and turned into a neverwhere? Yes. And again, this also was called in your Marvel Cinematic Universe, was called an incursion. Essentially going into another timeline, either deleting one or inadvertently affecting from the perception and precepts that you view your reality, going into another universe and pushing that tulpa onto another timeline. Now, can you traverse the parallel universes that are exactly like yourselves? Oh, yeah. Yes, you can. Where am I speaking from right now? This is something, yes, do we broadcast from Ontumba? Yes, we stand up in the mountains on the sides of two large pieces of stone technology. Well, and you're also in your Outlander series. What were the stones? Time travel stones. And they would the time travel stone itself would use its stone key with a symbol on it, and they transport to the same stone in multiple different time frames and timelines. So that said, the communication stones, one next to each other, are like an arc of communication, like what he did with his communication arcs before he didn't use those anymore. And also the two staves mean communication. We see Viracocha holding these. Now, not to bring him up, that kind of snakish bastard, but I'm just saying that he was more of a reptilian presence. But at any rate, so they had that bit of technology themselves. Now, with this, we are intricately woven into some of the Mayan history, where they took off from Lemuria, went out into space, and formed the Maya planet in the Pleiades. Their story's a little bit simpler. Their snake god, or the sun god, Viracocha, that one, how can I put him into this story to where you would understand this a bit more? Yes, there was some reptilian snakish stuff there. And who else had the symbol of the snake in cultures? That would have been Loki. So he tried to create some little breakaway things himself at the time. But anyway, the Asgardians can answer further into this. But with our own culture, if you went out into space and you went to set course for Ontumba, where would you end up? You would, if you had warp speed technology like you see on Star Trek, faster than light, or a portal, where would you go? If you will access the frequency of our home planet or home world, you would end up on the other side of the Milky Way into a very populated area of space. You would see something very akin to Japan, but in space. And you would see Our technology also is very holographic in nature. Like I say, if we want to build a building, we do not want to expend the resources because the resources are finite from the old period. So we build it in a hologram, test it out for, say, a few weeks or a few months, given if we want to really test it out, or even a year or two, or a few years. Then we decide whether we want to expend the resources on that structure. Well, it's essentially the holodeck on Star Trek. A couple people want to live within it. Like we want to create a new government building or a colony or whatnot. We see how it functions over an extended period first. Then we measure it out, see how many resources it needs, and down to the decimal point, and then we have our machines created. The premise of this is, if you saw these machines, like he says, they look like tree branches with extended interfaces with some of our symbols. This is how we read. We do not always read right to left. We were showing it right to left to him at the time, but they're actually all over the place, like the Talon languages in your Gene Roddenberry's Final Conflict, where they show the symbols just coming at you. It would be very difficult for a human to read that is not versed in some of the more Oriental languages like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, etc. Chinese, all of them. So very similar, but just like in your Japanese and Chinese, sometimes symbols are the same. Like the symbol for, I believe, picture is nuclear war in one of the others. I believe that's in Japanese. Japanese over there, and Chinese is picture. But the way this got screwed up is other cultures' languages got intermixed and began to introduce different ideas into the kanji. You see. So, and different connotations began to take hold from different galactic races and interversal and dimensional races. I hope this made some sense out of chaos.
Yeah, I want to ask, did you directly the religion Shintoism?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we wanted to introduce honor to a particular society on Earth, even some of our descendants that then did not remember certain ways of existing or certain honor codes that we express out in the cosmos. We do not worship a god. We just basically honor that of nature, honor that we go by a particular honor code. And those that break that, and also what you call the Bushido code as well, and some of the World Warriors code. Within this, we had tried to teach some of our, I do not mean to sound insulting to humans, but more some of our less advanced brethren. Just like the times of Atlantis, you had some of the less advanced people and more advanced people. It's the same with us and the Japanese. But the more we noticed that we introduced some of these things, the more it started to become a religion. Also, the fact that Abe no Seimei, the one that you know is Abe no Seimei, and also Takam, noticed that he started to mingle with human society after a while, but they began to get more power hungry as well. The energies on Earth haven't been always the stablest, and they've been like more of a lower density, as you would call it, or lower vibration, or they say D, but that's the wrong choice of words. It's more of a shifting of timelines and shifting of energy, and also as unstable as the Earth can be in that area. You have a descendant lineages such as the Onmyaji of Japan, then dividing themselves into the feudal clans. This is where you get the feudal clans from. Shintoism ended up becoming sometimes splinters, but its original precept is actually true. And for
That's
most.
interesting.
You so we understand, and it's great how much you value honor and that code. Is there other things in your culture that you really value?
Yes, we value knowledge as well. We love to obtain knowledge and obtain different, let's just say, like looking at different viewpoints, how different cultures would view us, and how then we would view them as a result, kind of like a living mirror. We love to see the fruits of our labors, and love to see how people have changed since the time of the Great Seeding. We do not like, however, how they've been interfered with, and how even the allies among you get sometimes mindful, like what happened to Nigel and the rest of them. The Mozen have been wonderful, but at the same time, there has been some susceptibilities because of their personal links to yourselves. No judgment. We learned a while ago that yes, we have personal links, and we honor all personal links and friendships and honor codes. When we give our word, we keep it. But at the same time, there has to be some level of detachedness so that we can perform our tasks and perform it well to keep and strongly hold that bond of friendship and camaraderie and unity. This allows us some wiggle room. Some people might think it's too stoic and heartless, but it's actually full of compassion and heart space. He saw an actor many, many years ago that was also on Your Man in the High Castle that was in another movie where they thought he was being too stoic when some child was abducted. He goes, I am actually mourning with you. But given our culture, the Japanese culture, we do not cry like yours. And we do the same thing. We are a mix. We have also some Iban tendencies in there that were also created by other aspects of Orions and such. And it got interwoven into a mix of DNAs from time, space, and dimension, and all of the above. We're the proverbial twilight zone of a star system, let's just put it that way. So some of the larger eyes and some of the eye fold type of that people always tend to make fun of a little bit, but we forgive them for their mockery. We laugh at some of these things too, just like some of the Asgardians and others do in their mead halls, saying, "Look at that goony fuck," things of this nature. And as to clarify our sense of humor and how we can laugh at ourselves, yes, we can drive our own spaceships and don't just wander out in roadways. So, yes, we can drive too. So, with that said, boy, tough room, no laughing. Okay, in this, other people might find that bigoted, but I find it hilarious. But anyway, and no, we don't all look alike either. But in this, I will fill in all the racist jokes where people would have questions about. That's my attempt at a sense of humor. But the answer to all of this is, what do we also focus on, say, out here in our solar system and our area of space? We focus not only on trade with our neighbors, but again, learning about our neighbors and learning about what goes on Earth. He saw many years ago, and this will apply to now, that him and Joanna saw that Earth was almost like a reality show, like that South Park episode that's famous. And that's actually true. Earth being kind of a reality show where we can see you, and even Ishida, this is one of the moments that he spoke the truth, and Kurumtai and them, where Earth is being rooted for from our solar system. It is literally like you have a big digital screen of them. People are watching from a distance. There's even an Earth on a screen that is literally floating in the air where people can pop this up and look. Our screens actually float from the floor out of a holographic strip or a photonic strip, come up and float in the air, and people can watch. And humans that go there will make it just look like one of their flat screen televisions or something they're familiar with, or a tablet or something of that nature. It's more akin to your Cyberpunk 2077, where you have the some of the way the technology looks in that, but not quite as dirty or filthy, or like how Tokyo looks, where you have the shining lights and things of this nature, but more of a organic, leafy looking version of it. Very much, Bjorn, like you made the graphics for your Tronverse, where you had some of the glowing edges and everything. It's similar, but not quite the same. We're aware of the Tronverse, but we don't traverse through it. But from our area of space, we'd also traded with the Asgardians. Back in the day, we also have a connection to the Bifrost, hence the Tori Gate, so the orange or vermilion Tori Gates. He calls it the Tori Gate Temple. With all the orange Tori Gates, and how he saw the grave sites say, "Open this door." They tried to attribute that to the afterlife. The native Japanese people did, where they thought that was a way of opening the door to the spirit world. I see how that allegorized into and amalgamized into a spiritual belief system. And as we said, Shinto morphed into something's both good and bad. So what happened was we would give the command to open the door. We would put a stone or key, like an Outlander with the time stones. And then also what he saw Lil and Enki do during the times of the Garden of Eden, where the flaming sword was Enlil's way of opening to that Garden of Eden passage through between Midgard and Asgard and other places. more of the waste station or decontamination place, or like in your Ezekiel's testimony, where Ezekiel essentially had to go through a decontamination. So did Enoch. And going to the Most High, that's who he was visiting with him. But anyway, this I hope answered.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say the Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea. Now there was talk about them. There was trade with the dragons. Now I know you said you traded with different races across the not just Earth but the across as well. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So I was trying to
Yes,
the dragons and the trade with dragons.
Yeah, we trade
with dragons. I was going to say with the sea. Now, was this the Mer race, or was this a aquatic Draco group trying to come through?
A little.
I know there was a large pool underneath Japan where they were congregating from.
Yes, they were congregating from the time wound, which is the dragon's triangle. So yes, you are correct. We encountered them a long time ago, like I said, through time wounds and such, long before the wound was ever festered. We saw echoes of it. Your nuclear technology also, unfortunately, made this possible. Also, the technology used in Lemuria and Atlantis' time frame that shattered time, or he would call it the dragon break, like in your Elder Scrolls, where your time septum made the is and is nots. So what happened was, yes, we did trade with regular dragons, mer people, and we attempted to repel some of those dimensional aquatic Dracos. So yes, you're picking up on all three. There are some families of ours, like the Khan family, like Genghis Khan and them from the Tartaria, that have found ways to morph their DNA into shape-shifting dragon forms. We do have were dragons as well. They are not common. They're only with the Khan family line, and a few others. But that also, some are the more the medieval fantasy looking, while others are more that Chinese cat-like or dog-like. So they'd be more attributed to werewolf or werecat at that point, or gargoyle-ish look. And yes, you do have the dogmen, the werewolves, and the cat people, vampires, and you know that whole bit. But it was just like your movie, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. That's more Tartaria and some of Xanadu and things of this nature. Your Kublai Khan was also Kukulkan, Khan, where he could transform into a dragon. So yes, we traded with dragon people. We traded with. We tried to befriend people, but we also were smart enough to know when they were highly dangerous, like the aquatic Draco or your xenomorphic types, and also the mer people. We traded with them. We helped them and some of the more Hawaiian-looking people forge Lemuria and Mu. And you also, in that history, Pele and her subsequent son, Maui, who was a slight pain in the asshole, I must say, did help forge some of the island cultures. And Pele, as she said in some of her past, she's a titan that took human form so that she could converse with the natives. She had brothers and sisters of her own that she had to contend with. They can go more into their history, but yes, to answer your question, Richie, it is actually a few things.
Good. Okay. Good to hear.
That's interesting. So maybe you could I could ask a question on just if we know that the Untumbans is a lot of different races within your planet, but would you say that how your physical appearance is, or where your roots are, is a lot like the Japanese people, and some of that history, and also what in physical form, what's your lifespan?
Interesting. Yes, we do look pretty much like the Japanese people. Some of the eyes are a little larger, like you see in Japan, because these are some of the more Iban and some Orion traits that got filtered into there, and other tall whitish traits. If you saw your friend, your Isaac, when he was around, he had slightly large eyes as well because of the tall white lineage. His mother had the larger eyes. Father more human, but with us, Yes, we have a mix. We do look mainly like the Japanese people. We do have fairy types there, and also Lanulos interacts with us on a regular basis as well, and other planets in the Pleiades, such as those medieval fantasy type Elder Scrollers type planets that have the Viking descent lineages on them. We interact with them on a regular basis. Our lifespan, humans might get annoyed at this. Our lifespan is at least 500 to 600 years at times. We noticed that as time went on, we also noticed there were some among us that were of larger stature. That's where some of the tall white DNA came in, and also some giant DNA on the Asgardian side. So we do have larger people. It's just like some of the ones that in your culture, like your Baron Trump or the tall basketball player that is Chinese. What happened was some of that DNA got mixed in, and now you're seeing some tall white traits with the longer arms. And 7 foot, that's more Baron Trump is more like how Isaac looked because of some of the Lanulosian. And also there's some Lyra Irma in there as well within the Pleiadian planets as well. This is where sometimes you get some of the slitted eyes from that side on the Lanulosian end, and also some Cassiopeian traits with the more S-shaped squiggle eyes. That's also some of your Mosen influence and whatnot, Darshinian influence, of which we are well aware some of the assholes on that end as well. In the knee of Cassiopeia, or the elbow of Cassiopeia, they have a strong military presence out there, both good and not so good. And then you have some worker planets out there, and you have a strong, like in Star Wars, where you had that inner circle of rebel planets and outer worlds and things of that nature. That's Cassiopeia. It's similar on our end of space, where there's a variation. So there's a mixed bag of people, but Untumbans in general live to be roughly 500 to 600 years old.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to say about your technology as well, because it functions the same as Levick does. It's hypothetic in a sense. It's like light technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you give us a brief details on? Can you just give us like a brief information about how that operates? Because it's something we would like to do in the future as well as humans.
Yes. What happens with our technology? It's just like some of the future humans in your Star Trek, where they take holographic, like later on in your 32nd Discovery century, 31st century, where even in Next Generation and Enterprise, they showed that some of the areas were more holographic in nature, and it was just a small metal husk. We do something similar. If you see any of those crafts in the sky that look like glowing diamonds, and then have almost like a cold flame coming out the back, kind of where we're passing through the ether, that is us. And where you see some of the ancient crop circles that have that look with the weird trail behind it, that is one of our crafts and one of our contributions. But other groups that, of course, like the Future Kind, put that there. I suppose you can call us that too. But at the same time, the Future Kind decided that they were going to mark the different races in different crop circles as well, and more again about the Greeks bearing gifts. With the technology, how this works is that the internal engine components are cold. They're very, very cold. That's why on some of your programs where your astrophysicist Travis was looking into a craft that looked like a diamond, but it was invisible to the eye, but a camera caught it. We allowed this for a brief period, and what happened was, notice that the engine was cold. Yes, the holographic technology runs really cold. It runs very cold. It's not like heavy water reactors like your Martian Germans use. They like things hot and burny, and we don't. But in this, just like he knew the body transfer technology, of which they stole from the Lyrans, and they stole it from the Orions, or the Evens and the Orions and all of them. What happened was, in those where he noticed there was a large central computer in the SSP that was a cube, it was on a graded floor that had water tanks in them. Normally these water tanks, like in your Dragon Ball Z, were used to heal like what's happening with Valiant Thor and Nigel them recently that the Belodians use. They use these Saiyan-like tanks that you see in that show, where it was made
Dragon
with
Ball.
DNA. Yeah, yes. This happens to be what we also use in this. The body transfer technology uses a similar fluid, whereas they have a clone of some sort where they pass the soul through a small cube, shunt it through the AI, and have the AI calculate bringing it into the other body. Now, what's beneath the grating? It is a heavy water nuclear reactor. We do not approve of this particular technology. This is also the spinoff of that timeline break, and also where the Martian Germans and some of them like to go. You called this the backstage of history? This is essentially where they went, is into that timeline and other variations thereof in time. Now, not to get too skewed, you have a cold reactor in the center powering photonic engines on all sides that are frequency-based technology that we could literally set the coordinates of where we wanted to go based through the photonic energy and the frequency by which then we snap straight to and portal straight to where we need to go. How do we propulse ourselves or use propulsion through normal space? That is where the cold reactor comes in, and that would be more like your impulse engines and thrusters are in your Star Trek, where there is a bit of a chemical propulsion there, but it is more of a cold. It's not cold fusion. It is more of a how can I explain this in terms you'll understand? It is the cold vacuum of space accessing the cold embrace, let's just say, of dark matter. And it is essentially a core of dark matter that exists in the extremist cold of the cold. When the cold then is surrounded by is then fired up with photonic holographic technology, like you see on Star Trek, the photonic emitters, or like the Doctor's hollow emitter in Voyager, it can create the outer glowing edges of a ship. Also, inside the cold of the cold, there is fuel within that dark matter. There is also within the fuel of the dark matter, there is also a device that surrounds that. We actually hijacked from the Martian Germans, and that's their Mercury device for their Bellcraft. And that's what they also made the Galactic with as well. So we actually pirated that from them. They can just go suck it. We do not care. But anyway, with this, we took this and began to perfect this. And so it was like Mercury in a centrifuge was what they were using. And creating more unstable anti-gravitic technology. But through the unstableness, we learned within our other breakaway. This came from the other breakaway, by the way, to how to perfect it and make it, to say in a bit of a joke, we made it smaller and more efficient. So with that, the holographic ends that are in diamond shapes that glow in practically every mood ring of a frequency that you have a color for, we can propulse and through a frequency here, and we take the frequency of over here where we wish to go, bring it here, and this is how a lot of cultures travel. So those ships were partially invented by the breakaway, but then we've had so many eons to perfect it and bring it up to spec and give the idea to the original breakaway. You see the cause of the effect, the effect is the cause, the effect is the cause of the effect, back and forth where your head would explode. Now, if you wanted to understand this, when we were caught on video, what did this look like? Two shadowy diamonds in the sky with a cold center and a plume coming out the back. And the future kind showed that in a crop circle form. I hope this is not as confusing as it sounded.
No, it was pretty good. Easy to follow.
We understand that quantum computers operate the same way, where they have to be down to the extreme cold of just above absolute zero,
yes,
which I think is like in Fahrenheit, for people to understand, is like minus 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's at such an extreme cold. But the physics changes at these extreme levels of cold. is that how things you're able to kind of get down to that more atomic molecular levels of the physics disappear and things, you get to the basics of how the universe is created?
Yes, exactly. Down to the ultra cold. See, the Martian Germans never could appreciate cold except with Antarctica. They found out the cold was prevalent in AI. Normally, cold would destroy computers. But when you have a particular type of quantum-based technology, they knew by flash freezing Antarctica back in the times of Atlantis, they would stun whatever the nanobots and the AI was. But the Nazis learned about the cold and the compression. And also your AI signal knew of this, that they could use it to its advantage. Is that computer core still in Antarctica? No. It's been harvested ad nauseum for centuries now. And it's actually cleared out, and the Nazis learned a bit about it themselves. It's like your Tartarian technology. There's bits and pieces all over the planet, but is it all active? No, not really. And stone technology. But the cold of space, the cold core of this. Yes, is there a quantum computing unit within that? Yes, and within the cube that junted the souls from one vessel to the next, like a big sci-fi set of jugs lining a room. And in your body transfer tech and your SSP, yes, it was cold in its center. They knew they had to keep it that way, but they love their heat. They love, even though Mars was a bit cooler and Antarctica was cooler, they loved some of the ice and snow like some of their Viking counterparts, but at the same time, they loved more reds and they loved more like power colors and things of this nature. Yes, do we love red as more hero-based color, like in Japan, the heroes wear red? Yes, we show it as a red power color, but they want everything red. They want everything. They like red everywhere. We're not that weird. We love multiple colors. We love all the big flashy colors, but red is the heroic color. Now, back on track. The tech, we like making fun of those other guys, as you can tell. But with this, because they're stupid, I'm just saying, then they can't take a sense of humor. The Hans and Franz thing he said was brilliant, by the way. They do not have a sense of humor at all, where he called the Nazi commandant and the lieutenant Hans and Franz, and they hated him for it. That, and when he was transferred into a female body in the SSP, where he was taunting the doctor when the doctor was testing the body out, and he just kind of made fun and went, and did stuff like that and got beat up. And they were only concerned about the body. They didn't care about the soul. Now, we care about the souls really immensely. This is why we also help with some that are stray, that from some of those times we help putting them into a synthetic. We don't capture them unless they want this. But we don't like them floating throughout space and time like Odin didn't like them floating out through space and time. That's what you would call the screaming souls of Maldek. That was in your end humble raw material, but the enemy was just basically flaunting what they did. With this, in those ships, when we traverse space and time, and we can do that too, we caught a few of these, and we brought them back to our biospheres. And some people say, oh, that's soul trade. No, we try to prevent some of the soul trade. We see other cultures stealing ghosts and whatnot from Earth, and we find it abhorrent. We try to stop this wherever we see it. And if we don't see it, we hope another human sees it and reports it. And he's been doing this for years. And your Lancaneer, or I find it funny they call Lancaneer, that means dickhead in their language, but they're a type of white elf that act as caravan guards for soul arcs, and they capture ghosts from cemeteries and the whole soul trade, about this part. And they bring them back to the biospheres of whom purchases these particular souls. We find this slave trade abhorrent. When we find them floating in the ethers from that time frame, or if they escape from somewhere, you'd think they would go to spirit, but sometimes they do not, like a ghost. And we give them the option of moving on, like you pass them on the spirit, and we ask the oversoul if they wish to be in a form like one of our synthetics. They say, yes, wonderful, they're with us. If no, they're sent on. We do not believe in capturing them against their will. The cold of the computer makes this possible, makes it possible to run all the soul arcs, makes it possible to run all of it. Even your moon had soul trap tendencies as well, like in Legend or in Saturn or any of the planets. These are all, some of them are burning hot, but in some areas you would find devices that hummed at the center of some of these planets that had some of the soul trap tendencies, all cold. Every one of them is cold. They're of the quantum computing unit that you called it the clockmaker, but at the same time, the monoliths, all of this throughout the system were the plugs for that, for that system. All those monoliths, everything working on cold quantum computing technology. I hope this described well enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do you use a lot of stone technology within any of your tech?
Yes, when it is possible to do so, because of all the resources that the black goo ate up many ages ago, it is tough to find certain resources. Some of the more rich resources are in your solar system. This is why you have multitudes of pirates trying to steal some of your resources constantly, or dealing with the ICC. Hence why he saw in Globe, Arizona, there was an ET species that was there, trying to deal with the ICC over copper mining rights and other things that were down in Agartha. And some Agarthan tribes and some elementals and the Native Americans were objecting. This is why when he tricked that ET species into not trusting the ICC, all the other races were happy. That's why the little elemental elf figures left them $40 on the ground. They actually pickpocketed one of the ICC guys, by the way. That's all the guy had on him, by the way. But you would think they had to have more, but they want to keep up appearances, so they just keep something in their wallet. But they advertise themselves. So if you see ICC, they're usually trying to mine some resource. Just like the mining of the resources, like what Nigel was talking about with the fires. I will speak on this for a sec with the weather control and whatnot. What happens is they burn out a place, they cause a disaster, and they mine the resources. Because they know this solar system is rich in stuff the others don't have. Just like your Trump going to Greenland and Venezuela. There are resources in these places that can be traded to the galactic community. You see, even if he's not completely aware, others are. So, and also your Nazis, when they were trying to gain all the artifacts and all of the also works of art and things of this nature, they were not only wanting paranormal and dimensional power type of artifacts for the demigods they worshipped. And I say plural, in that they knew the power of the gods, quote unquote. They also wanted to be able to trade with the galactic community because they were being shown where to find some of this technology. Like when Hitler invaded Poland, the Tartarian fortress that is there, the Draco and them were guiding him there, just so because they wanted access to it. They figured somebody on Midgard would try to gain access to it. This is what some of these forces are hoping to this day will happen. So a being such as Igron goes in there and tries to block that coding from somebody accessing it unless they have more of a hearth space open. You see, not something like the Draco, which they don't. Let's just put it that way.
Right. Well, that's interesting talking about the technology. Why is humanity stuck at, what is it on the table of elements, 118 or something like that? Seems like scientists don't want to advance that, but that's very important to more scientific discoveries and the advancement. So has our future kind trying to do this in as part of the advancement? Why is it so controlled here?
It is controlled because the powers that be do not wish regular humans to have that level of power. They wish to have somebody to control and cull if necessary, you see. So they are limiting your scientific community to what was already known and not allowing the advancement. Hence, sometimes you've even heard your Stephen Greer saying the lost century. They've said the 100 years disclosure narrative. You've heard, I'm not promoting any particular one type of person or pundit, just saying the words have been used. And within that, you lost a century. Hence, they wanted to offset the knowledge that, like your Martian Germans and Cabal and everybody wished to do this, so that you and ICC and everybody wanted to have the proper information, and you guys did not have the up-to-date. Joanne and him also called this the warning before the spells. You get certain channelings sometimes, and you don't get the warnings on what to, or what not to do with a particular thing. You have to muddle your way through it and figure it out, which they have pretty well, and you guys have pretty well. And now you've updated your informational library and repertoire. So with that, just say the humanity and the scientific community has not updated their repertoire. This is also why they will not include paranormal stuff in there as well, like Hitler did, because they wish to not be like him. They think it's being like him. They've been told a propaganda tagline, essentially a line of bullshit, that somehow they'll turn into a clandestine empire like him. And they're like, oh no, we're against that. We're against being racist. So therefore, they won't include any of the paranormal, anything. They just let people go off and do their thing. Hope the bad guys just hope that it's considered frivolous or fringe. This is why you get the term fringe. Fringe is actually the real science. Like, so what's happening in your time travel projects, what's happening, even Hitler and them knew what was going on. Fringe is where you want to be. Cookie cutter, or what's the term humans use? White bread or mediocre? Sometimes boring is good, but in this instance, being too far behind the times isn't necessarily a good thing. Could we share knowledge? Yes, when we have multiple times. But there's certain restrictions people in space are under. The Galactic Federation, unfortunately, has put a multitude, layers and layers and layers of restrictions. Because they themselves have also dumbed people back. You may, Bjorn may recognize this particular trait because of the fact if certain people get too far in some areas, they hold them back, thinking that they'll crack the whole situation wide open long before it is meant to. Just like the Vulcans in Star Trek holding back Archer's father in the Warp 5 project. It's the same thing, thinking that, Earth has to be further along first before they can be warped out into the galaxy. I fervently disagree with this assessment. There are humans out in the galaxy right now that are showing their true mettle and their true honor code. They're not going to turn out like some of the Martian Germans. This is why your academia thinks that they're going to turn into another Hitler. That's propaganda being told by the Martian Germans, like, you don't want to have this happen, when in fact it already did. So I do have to report, though, that some of them are on the outs. Some of them are not as potent as they used to be. But they're also, some of the time travel projects lent them to having certain breakaway descendant colonies as well. I just wish to warn people about this, but they're not of the bigoted kind. They are, however, descendant of them, very much what's similar to happened to us. I just wish to warn people about that right now.
Oh, that's interesting. That's something we haven't talked about or.
Mars is all but dried up, though. Let's just put it. There are other races like some insectoid types, lizard types, but you have some of the Martian Germans. But as Joanna saw in the past in her SSP timeframe, where there was an experiment of where people were just allowed to die there. That was the Martian Germans doing this. This was it. She saw them at their peak of power. They are nowhere close to that anymore. I just wish to report that.
What's your relationship with the Galactic Federation and Valiant Thor's people that we've talked about as kind of managing the curation of the 100-year disclosure and what we call the yield?
I find it abhorrent. In fact, with the 100 years disclosure, yes, there is value in just slowly catching people up if they were off by a little bit. I see value in that so that there is very little friction. But then it can also turn into its own type oppression, or what he found out in a recording, he called it over-religiosity, where it's actually more of an over-anal retentativeness that Loki tended to instill on people. There was a priest that said it on a recording, a Tucker recording he saw. That's a true thing. Where you can go overboard or pray too much around Mecca or something like that, or hence Shari law is part of this as well, and a variant of other things such as extreme OCD, anal retentive type of behavior. How do we view the Galactic Federation? We view them as there. Let's just put it that way. Yes, do we have a member on the Galactic Senate? Yes, we do. And we only appoint people that are the most honorable of the most honorable. And even he scratches his head because a lot of the beings that are there, some don't care about Earth, some don't care, some do care immensely. The number of that is growing, especially since what happened to Isaac. But on this note, I say they're there. They're no different than your Congress or your Parliament or any of these type of organizations. The beauty of the building they're in and the structure and everything is to be something to behold. Now, if they would only act like how the geometry looked, I think we'd all be in a better place. It's kind of like a big chapel. Some would think almost like it's an energy collector, like the Archontic type dimensional based stuff. But no, geometry can be a good thing and a bad thing. Why do you think your buildings don't look geometric anymore? They wanted these boxed in prisons that had no geometric value at all. And, and even the Galactic Federation recognizes, but they're the ones, I must say, that implemented some of your psionic dampening technology, because they were hearing the noise of humanity. Sound familiar? That's Enlil as well. So they didn't exactly try to stop the flood or anything like that. They kind of were like, okay, that's their business, that kind of thing. But some races out there don't really know a whole lot about this sector either. It's like, would you know? As Igron said to them last night, would you know in your country, or in the United States, or in England, would you know what happened in somebody's private home somewhere in the depths of, like, say, Mexico, or even in the United States, or even in your neighbor? Do you know what they're up to? No. And that's how some of them are out there. They don't know completely what's going on. They just know they hear some complaints from time to time in the courts. But I digress in this area. We are a member of this, but at the same time, we have our own needs, wants, and honor code. And we made it quite clear to them when we joined up that we would not break or violate these codes. So that, and also the fact that some of the worlds and planets that are out there, some of those species found out that they had been manicured by the Galactic Federation. It wasn't just Anunnaki that did this. It wasn't just the Odin sons that did manipulating. It wasn't just other Anunnaki or Dark Orion, Dark Anunnaki. The Galactic Federation did its fair share of this as well. And yes, are the people on Earth descendants of that organization? Yes. But at the same time, they seem to have forgotten the value of Earth and what was put into that, what you call the grand experiment. But the other races didn't like being diddled with either. So there is actually an argument going on about the value and the disvalue, or the lack of value, let's just say, behind that level of manipulation. But the thing of it is, though, that happens all over the galaxy. Like I said, you could buy an animal template and have them created. There is a race in the Buatas, you call it the Boots or the Booties, or Arcturus, or whatever you want to call it, that, not an actual race name, by the way. You could say some are archons that you use the term, but also at the same time, that race is made up of a bunch too. Sometimes there's these other white elfish type and blue elfish Syrian looking types, but then there's the harsh, extreme white Orion with the rock looking armor, the ones that did a lot of damage recently. But these other guys, like in your Star Wars Attack of the Clones, where they had that Camino race that had the long necks. They also, them and the Ebons and a couple of others, actually sell genetically prefab templates to people that they could have on their own planet. Why do you think Why do you think that the people steal genetics here so often? Because of the fact that then it can be sold to those guys, and they're grateful for the samples. And then why do you think the Ebons are down here doing creepy shit? And why do you think there's military factions using frickin' bedbugs to steal different genetic samples? Because it's a business. There's even a catalog out there that you can order different things out of. Not kidding. And we have seen this. We find this a bit abhorrent, but we also have used certain practices in order, like with the synths and whatnot. So there is certain things that are a practice that aren't bad with it. It's not unlike it's not like Star Trek, where they've completely outlawed genetic engineering because of Khan and the eugenics wars. and they don't allow certain species to enter unless they get rid of all their genetically engineered genetics and go back to normal, like they did the Lyrians in Star Trek: Strange New World. But it is very much like a mix between Star Wars and Star Trek in that area. But to sum it up in bullet points, the Galactic Federation, Galactic Senate is there. It probably will be there for some time, just like you consider your Congress, your Senate, your governments or Parliament to just be there, like a storm on the horizon kind of thing, weather it a little bit. And we are making strides to improve those particular situations, let's just put it that way, and dealing with some of the ICC greedy interests.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you oh, go ahead, Rich, if you want. I was going to ask a question around the Galactic Senate and humanity.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, now we know that the Sasquatch are on the first time for Midgard that are on the Galactic Senate, but there's not a lot of original races that are on the Senate specifically communicating for the benefit of Midgard. So it's great to hear that you are as well, and your race is actually doing that. But how come somebody like Pele, or that's a Titan, is not on the Senate?
Is there a Titan representative there? Yes. And has been for some time, but not what you'd expect, not stone or lava-like or anything like that. Not large like that. There is a size-accommodated resident there that sometimes they don't like having to come there, so they excuse a moment, throw dry. They sent a representative there that was a smaller Titan. If you saw him, he would look kind of like a rock person. He saw one years ago that one was Ludus, and then there was another one by the name of Labrace. He called him Buddy Moon, but that was not actually. I hate to say this was not a complete real thing. That was a deceiver utilizing that particular race, and some that had been captured by your Martian Germans and whatnot. And in the earlier days from the Orions on the moon, that's why he saw this dream where the moon was split open, shrunk like in your Despicable Me, and saw some insectoids and some little rock people that were laying on a towel when some military busted the moon open. And got that out of the sky. And yes, there are some Death Star connotations with that as well. How your Star Wars got that idea, and from some of Odin's weaponry and whatnot. But going back to the premise, there is a type of those rock people come from Earth. There are some more like golem types that are dimensional rock people that he saw recently. He saw a rock person that was on someone's property years ago that was like in your old Trek series where there was this rock lava looking person. That's a Titan type. And yes, your Maui is some such like this as well, where he literally the word Tuhalm that he used to use meant rock and dirt. So they literally come from here. It is one of those type of races that is there. Now, do they like being there? No, they'd much rather be on Earth here. But the Senate needed some kind of representative at one point that represented those interests. But there's so many cultures here. Another reason why they wanted to whittle it down to one. But as Fuman Simar made it quite clear to them, there are multiple cultures here, and they need to just accommodate them all in some fashion or form, even if there's multiple variations on a theme, and if there's multiple currencies as well that have to be whittled down into a galactic standard, as he calls it, or galactic credits. But dealing with the Senate, what's the term that people use here? They'd rather have a root canal. That's essentially, or some kind of drilling their teeth of some kind. This is essentially the feeling that we get, or nails on a chalkboard is the better term. But the Titans do have a representative there. But Pele is one of those that wouldn't be caught dead doing it because also she has to do things on Earth. And some of the others, like Chrome and them, some of them are actually too large. Like they're embodiments of different, like Hyperion. He's a tree form. He wouldn't be able to. But someone like a rock person that has a culture that can come and go from the rock faces. It's very much like Odo's people with the Great Link in Star Trek DS9. It's like that with their rock interfaces. He can represent them quite easily out there, just like Odo in Star Trek can as one of the, like a progenitor race type. So I'm hoping that was not confusing.
No. Richie, do you have a question you want to
ask? No, I think most of it's been said.
Okay, I think we could, close this showdown, and if you have anything else that you want to add, I think we covered quite a bit, and I want to thank you for not only supporting Midgard and humanity and our venture forward and path, but thanks for sharing everything about your group.
Yes, I thank you for this chance to talk to rectify some of the past mistakes as far as information went. They had Shita and Kurumtai had their reasons for not telling the complete truth. They were protecting certain rules and yield interests, which again I am abhorrent to. You have declared all masks fall off, and I'm here to honor this particular calling and deception no more. So, like what Cassie was saying about being Cassandra or impersonating Khali at the time, and it was with other interests that you guys were looking into. Yes and no. There are others that impersonated this, but yes, she was the one at a specific incident. So that's what she was fessing up to. Just like some of the Mozen have been around here a lot longer than you think. And Lazen and Vesa and Isaac were around, and Thorzen were around a lot longer than anybody thought. So they can talk to all of that. Is there a Khali demigod? Yes and no. The Cassandra, basically saying Khali to Cassandra, that was the old GIC channeling that he did with a picked lady that Ryan was so abhorrent to. I will say this: was she that person? Yes. Was there a Khali like demigod type person? No. That was how can I put that? Yes, there was Kali Durga, but at the same time, some of your Enlil was impersonating Shiva and doing things like this over there. Was there a guy named Durga at one point? Yes, there was, but with this, she was impersonating both of those sides as far as modern channelings were going because they were protecting Mozen interests. I, again, do not like those particular practices. This is why they've all been encouraged to fess up on this particular issue. Eventually, I will let them talk about their own history and their own honor moments and their own flubs. So I do not want to talk for someone else. I thank you for allowing me on to speak today. I'm going to detach. So good day to you all.
Thank you very much. Good day.
Oh, man. Okay, he's a pretty easy channel, but he was getting interfered with a little. But there were a few sources in the beginning. I was seeing like a snake rearing up and doing things of that nature. Just like I was seeing like this Naga-like form, and I do believe he said that was one of Echidna's forces, and he's saying now that they have a bit of a rivalry history with Echidna. And just like in the Elder Scrolls, where you have like the half human and the half snake type of beings in that's more Naga. Echidna went from ancient Greece to worshipped in England. They moved the London Bridge over to Arizona, and Naga and her went with it, and the church that's in Lake Havasu City is one of her temples. I found one of her temples here in Virginia Beach as well. Anything with the Lake Havasu City bridge, like the crescent moon symbol, that is Echidna religion. And he's also saying one more bit. The Cassiopeian Muhammad religion with the crescent moon and the star and everything was also was partial Persian, Darshinian. Also, Echidna got her fangs in there along with some of the Oriental cultures. So she's just one of the demigods that screws around, is what he's putting in my head. But how that got mixed into Untumban culture is she got her temple footholds in parts of the Oriental world as well. So that's out of curiosity, he was telling me that bit of information. He was downloading that to me, but more on that at some point in the future. Just say that's where that came from. Because we noticed the London Bridge Church here. I passed this the other day. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this linked? Is this one of her temples? And because see, the energy saturated the original London Bridge, and that was a sacrificial altar. That's what that giant bridge was. And that's why that the original founder, or the original person that basically ordered the bridge, he goes, oh, they gave me the wrong one. No, you just did that as a cover story because you're an Echidna worshiper. So you're one of her flunkies. So I found out that bit of information. He's telling me correct on that. But other than that, that's who was pushing. I was sensing a female snake presence, and that's who was pushing on the conversation, because she didn't want the Untumbans throwing her under the bus. Well, he just did it as they're taking him. So he was making sure that her interference didn't go unchecked. So I thought that was quite interesting. I thought it was going to be Lilith for a minute, but it was Echidna. Very similar. So I don't know if you two have anything else to add before we take this out.
Nah.
No, it was good.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to this channel and watching this show with us. We greatly appreciate this. And if you want to book it to YouTube, I found out an interesting factoid this morning, that the burying of different channels, if they think it is cookie cutter, they will bury a particular one in favor of one that came first. This is a fact I found out about the YouTube tallying that happened this morning. If you don't want people to do this to our channels, make sure that you are loud and proud about it being different than the rest. And not just being cookie cutter. The AI looks for similar words or similar things looked after, and it will go for the originator of the original one versus one you just did. So that's a new algorithm that's been put in place. If you don't want YouTube messing around with your material, don't let them do it. Just make sure you complain to them very loudly about that. So just so they have no choice. They were bowing down to ChatGPT is what they were doing. They were trying to switch it because they had to compete with ChatGPT, and they thought they had direct access to information, and so they figured they'd just make it easier by cutting out anything that they thought was cookie cutter. So I wanted to inform people of that. That's why you're not seeing as much activity, because they're doing it. So that's a form of shadow banning as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But thank you nonetheless for subscribing to this channel. We look forward to doing any other future episodes for you guys. So at this point in time, I now close this circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.